Our meeting is open. Let's call the roll, please.
Alderman Conway, Alderman Moore, Alderman Vaccaro,
Present.
Alderman Cone,
Present.
Alderwoman Howard,
Present.
Alderman Muhammad, Chairwoman Davis.
Present.
4 present, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I shall apologize for being a little bit late. But one of the things that we will know and understand is if this was the only thing we had to do, it would be wonderful. But we're all balancing the best we can. So we have 2 board bills before us, and we will also have a presentation from Amber Gooding at the end of our board bills. And so I'd like to ask the director to move forward with board bill number 135.
Okay, I'm not sure if everyone has met, but Ron Stella is our deputy director for maintenance and operations, and so this falls under his domain, so I'm going to ask Ron to present today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning, Alderman. This is the first amendment to the professional service agreement for fleet maintenance, repair, and vehicle services, which would have expired on December 31st, 2017, and will now end on April 30th, 2018. The service agreement is needed to provide light maintenance and repair services to our fleet of vehicles. The contractor and the services provided typically perform all the preventive maintenance on approximately 130 small passenger vehicles, and from time to time perform maintenance on specialized equipment. The extension is needed for internal staff to complete the revised scope of work for the next solicitation for bid, which shall include an option for auto body repair work as well, in an effort to increase our efficiency of having repairs completed on time with multiple agencies. Complete Auto Body and Repair has had the contract for 5 years and is an experienced and responsive company. They conduct similar services, fleet services for United States Postal Service and FedEx. For this contract, the last 12-month expenditures were approximately $90,000, and we are budgeted for approximately $8,333 a month, and with a 4-month extension of $33,335 would increase the not to exceed amount from $500,000 to $533,000. I respectfully request your approval for this first amendment for the service agreement, fleet maintenance and repair services.
We might want to add that we are in the process of putting a bid out, obviously, for the next one. So it will be a contract that does come forward in the future, but due to just the complicatedness of the project and making sure that we get all of our T's and I's crossed and dotted right, it's taking a little longer than we anticipated.
Okay.
Rather than go out with something that we're not fully prepared and it's not an excellent product, we want this extension just to give ourselves enough time to review the revised scope of work for the new solicitation.
And I'll add to that, at our airport commission meeting, one of the things that we discussed was that we had some concerns about minority participation, and this will also give them an opportunity to also look for the opportunities to have that included in the next contract. So this small extension process is just to keep a vendor in place until we can let out a new contract and get it approved. I'll ask any questions of the committee, please. Alderman Shane.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know why I thought you, Alderman Vaccaro.
Yeah, I guess I do have problems with it, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
5 years ago, is this also the compressed natural gas that it goes out?
You're correct, they do service our CNG fleet as well.
Right, and 5 years ago, and I don't know, Shane, if you remember, if you were on transportation at the time.
Been on it for 9 years now.
So if you remember, we didn't pass it out because they were trying to explain to me why we have a repair shop there that basically couldn't work on vehicles like compressed natural gas, or like, oh, well, because it's really dangerous, with a promise, because we didn't pass it out. Bill Cordy came back in.
Mm-hmm.
Bill talked to us and said, well, we're gonna fix this. Because I said, well, this is crazy that we're sending stuff, when we got a whole fleet of mechanics and stuff there, that he said, well, they just weren't trained on the compressed natural gas. So 5 years ago, there was a promise, when we passed this out, that said, you know, they're gonna train the guys, and that this is just a one-time deal, and, you know, and I don't even know if our meetings were taped back then, but, Shane, if you can remember, we didn't pass it out. Bill came in, then we did pass it on
Right.
the second go-around, but it was only with the, that these guys were actually gonna train the guys. So in 5 years, you're telling me we haven't trained the
No,
mechanics
No.
that we have there?
We do a significant amount of training, and so when we get a car from the manufacturer is obligated to do training for us. We also have companies do training for our guys. So we do small amounts of repair on some of the CNG vehicles. The CNG makes up about 70% of our fleet.
We were talking about oil changes. They
Yeah,
weren't even doing
these-
oil
the-
changes.
It's.
They were saying it was too dangerous to do an oil change.
No,
I
that's
wouldn't look,
not-
I wouldn't look
I
at
mean,
it
that's
like that. We do have staff certified. This basically supplements our existing staff workload. So if you think about it, the small vehicles, all our fleet vehicles of 130, go to this company for the preventive maintenance. Our guys work on about 400 to 450 pieces of equipment, heavy-duty equipment. So these are fleet maintenance tech 3s and 4s. So they do all heavy equipment, snow removal, fire trucks, all the large dump trucks, and they also do a lot of our lawn equipment and all our small equipment as well. So that's how it's divided up. It basically supplements our manpower, and if we didn't have this, we would have to add to our internal manpower significantly to but this augments it. The small things are contracted out, so our guys could focus on the heavy
So
specialized.
how much a year are you spending?
It's $100,000 a year.
You can hire a couple guys to do oil changes.
Yeah, but a
for
couple
less
guys,
than that.
it's not just it's not just oil changes, and I think, I'm sorry, was someone else speaking?
Well,
I
mean,
was about to ask that, one of the things that we wanted to do is to make sure that when we ask questions and they are answered, then we move to your next question.
I'm still working on this question.
Oh, I thought he had answered your question. Go ahead.
No, I'm still working on the question of why and how much we're spending. That's another question.
It's right here.
And he answered
You know,
that. And he
You know,
answered that.
yeah, right, and then my answer to that is, I mean,
No, I
if
just,
you don't want me to answer any questions, just say that.
Sir,
and
I was
I'll
just
start
getting-
coming in, and if the meeting doesn't
first
start
thing
on
you will
time, I'll
not do
start
is argue
walking
with
out.
me.
Well,
I
I'm not
will
gonna argue
pass
either.
you up. You will not have any more questions.
Right. Good,
I'll go
well,
to
I
the
won't.
next person.
Go for
I
it.
don't have an issue with that. I don't
You can
argue.
go for it,
I don't
because I
argue.
show up on time for meetings.
And you can leave it now.
No, I'll wait in the next meeting when
You
it's
can
on
leave.
time. I
If
will,
you
as long as
feel-
I'm a quorum.
If you feel as though you've been put upon, sir, you always have the opportunity not to show up
Good, I'll
and
leave,
or
I'll
leave.
leave, I'll leave now, you
But
won't
you
have a
will not
quorum, you won't
argue
be
with
able to
me.
make a vote. You won't be able to vote this.
Alderman,
I'll walk
Colin,
out
you're
now and
next.
you won't be able to vote on it. Then you won't have a quorum, because we never have a quorum in this committee, because even you showed up late. So don't have a vote then. It's just that simple.
sir, you have to do what you feel is best for you.
So I do have a few questions.
Go ahead.
The maintenance portion of this contract, you mentioned 400 vehicles, in our fleet.
Our city employees do about 400 to 450 vehicles
Right,
in equipment.
but I'm just curious, do those vehicles include things like, the baggage vehicles, or are those serviced by
No.
the airlines?
Those are serviced by
or-
the airline.
Okay. I know with other city serviced vehicles, usually we get a list of the different vehicles, particularly, mostly like the take-home cars and things of that nature, but I am curious, what types of, vehicles at the airport are being serviced, not only by this contract, but by, our employees out there as
So
well.
annually, we do submit that list of take-home vehicles along with the city list
Right,
on the
but
spreadsheet.
would that, because these aren't necessarily take-home vehicles, right?
Some
in the
are.
400?
So, yes.
Some would, okay.
So we have there's, within the take-home vehicles, I think our number was 16, I think, I could be off.
Right, it's roughly.
But we have almost 900 vehicles at the airport.
Mhm.
So all of our vehicles would be the trucks that are drive around all day. So we have airfield maintenance painters that have to go out on the airfield and they have to paint. They have vehicles that go out that have the product in that they need to do that. We have vehicles to remove rubber off the runway. I mean, we have multiple vehicles. One of the things, and I think Alderman McCarl was referring to this, is, and Ron wasn't here at the time, but we were having extreme difficulty in finding mechanics. We still do. We replace every attrition mechanic that we have, and we can't ever fill the positions. And we were getting into an issue at the airport where we were unable to keep our vehicles operating on a day-to-day basis, which affects the operation of the airport. And I said, we can't do this anymore. So we ended up going to an outsourced contract. Our team is the team that we have is extremely well-trained for the larger equipment pieces, which is hard to find. So we focused on making sure that our team at the airport continued to maintain the snow brooms and the large pieces of equipment, that there isn't a lot of expertise out in the area to do that. And what we found was a way to be able to do the daily routine maintenance and stuff that, yes, our team could do, but we can't find the mechanics to get it done. And so we've used this outsourced contract to do that. And of that, Shane, there could be 500 different vehicles that they work on. Some they might not touch in that given year. It just depends. But we can get a list that's got, but it could be everything from a small vehicle that services the runway, to a vehicle that runs parts between shops, to a vehicle that, you know, goes from stores to stores and drops off parts. It could be just a multitude of things.
So is this contract, I get that the contract is for capacity, you know, because it's a challenge, you know, with, you know, personnel, hiring personnel, sometimes for these positions, but with the overflow capacity that is handled through this contract, are they mostly doing things like oil changes and like part replacements on smaller vehicles?
Correct, it does preventive maintenance, just like your car.
Right, every 5,000 miles.
Yes,
yeah,
we're using this contract for those small repairs and preventive maintenance, while our guys focus on the heavy equipment.
And the CNG.
They do, this contract, our CNG vehicles are mostly passenger vehicles.
Mhm.
So this contract works on a majority of our CNG vehicles.
Okay.
And CNG, 5-6 years ago, was not as prevalent as it is today. It's a little bit more prevalent. There's more people that are trained and qualified to work on it. It's not as scary as it was, and you have to follow safety recommendations and have training, but it's not what it was 6 years ago.
Okay. And then, I guess, what is, this is just an extension of the current contract for another year?
4
So-
months.
4 months.
Or, well, when's the RFP going out then?
It should be out in about a month. It's an
Okay.
SFB, and it'll give us 2 months to review it. So this will end April 30th, and our goal is to go back to commission in March, and then.
Sorry, I
that's-
can't believe we're this far into 2017.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just a 4-month extension on the current contract, and then, but it's not changing any of the terms within that contract, it's just
No.
extending it out 4
Yes.
months. And then the intent with the new contract is what?
With the same services, but we also spend money on body repair, which the scope of work in this contract does not cover body repair. So we estimated what we spent on body repair for the last 3 years, and we're looking to have a prospective bidder bid on both repair and body work, or one or the other. And that way we have a contractor that we could send and get our
So
body
when I hear
repair.
body repair, I think accidents.
Yes,
Are we
yes.
having a lot of accidents? in the
No, but
airport?
we have wear and tear, we have, you know, doors that blow open from the wind, our guys operate 24/7, all
Right.
weather, and things happen. And I don't let city vehicles look like they're damaged when they're driving around, so it's
Yeah.
important to me in the airport that we have a good presence, and, you know, we work.
We had a bus driver last night who had a heart attack in one of the vehicles. And,
Oh, wow.
and obviously,
Is he okay?
she is
Or
okay,
she?
and there were no
Okay.
passengers on board, thank goodness.
Oh,
She was,
wonderful.
at the
Okay.
hospital, but, so, stuff happens.
Yeah, naturally. That's really all the questions that I had, Madam Chairwoman.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman Howard.
From what you're saying, let me see if I'm understanding. You have many types of vehicles out there and many types of equipment. So you have a number of mechanics to take
Mhm.
care of airport-specific
Yes.
equipment and vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So are these, I mean, do the mechanics, okay, how many vehicles in total do you have approximately?
About 450.
About 450?
Yes. Some of that
Okay,
includes some equipment.
Of those, how many are passenger or, you know, transportation vehicles?
In addition to those are about 130. And so you add the
So
130.
400,
Yes, plus.
130 of those
Yes.
are transport, or
No, it's in addition to, so
So
let's say
there's
530,
530.
yes. And our mechanics also do some generator repairs and some other things, and
Well, that's,
and
I'm
vi-
just trying to
yeah.
get a handle on how many mechanics do you have?
approximately 30.
And those mechanics service
Most
your
of them.
airport-specific equipment?
Yes.
Now, that would be, snow blowers and stuff like that, so that stuff is not going like to this
No,
auto
that's
repair
correct.
shop. So the auto repair shop is strictly for
Preventive
vehicles,
maintenance, small passenger vehicles, and
passenger
if-
vehicles.
visually, you're small passenger vehicles, but if you picture the street department, when they operate in the dump trucks and, and refuse, when they go around, that's similar to what equipment our guys service.
Right, they're servicing your
Heavy equipment.
your job-specific
Yeah.
or location-specific
Mhm.
vehicles. And then this is sort of the overage that they can't get to.
In that it's not cost efficient to have our Tech 3 and Tech 4s service and do oil changes on small passenger vehicles. The city has a classification for auto tech 1s and 2s,
3 and 4,
and
I
that's
understand
really their job. We don't staff that at the airport this time.
You don't have the 1 and 2s.
We don't need it. We're focusing on our critical equipment.
The airport-specific
Yes.
equipment.
Mhm.
And so, about how many vehicles does this organization, your outsource?
About how many they do? About 130.
About 130
Yes.
of those, okay. Okay. I think that's all. So there's about 530 vehicles in the fleet, and then
Yes.
they're just servicing the ones that are simple, I guess, for lack of a better
Yeah, that's a good way.
qualification.
Yeah.
Simple road vehicles.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Well,
Thank
thank you.
Alderman Cone, you had another question?
Yeah, so you all are doing this as apart from the city's fleet management services?
We are apart from the city's
Or
fleet
you are a
management.
part of?
Yeah, we are apart separate. We are
Our
Oh,
part,
separate.
a part.
a
So
part.
the city,
Okay.
the city's falls,
Independent.
yes, the city
Independent,
falls under
okay.
BPS, the airports falls under the airport director and then me.
So has there ever been any conversation with Rich Bradley from BPS about, the overflow issue? I mean, and having the city's fleet services, I don't even know if they have capacity in fleet
They don't.
services.
They don't, and I think
So-
if you look at the shortages.
Are they having the same
Oh, they don't have
issue
enough mechanics.
That's
then?
my understanding.
Okay.
And it's also
I mean, cause that certainly would make me feel more comfortable supporting.
our
you
own
know,
people, sure.
I mean, well, supporting our own people, but also knowing that
Using word.
another division that has a similar function is also having the same issue with recruitment of, employees and, that, I mean, they might need to look at a similar
Yeah.
process to address their overflow capacity
If you look on
issues.
the website and look at the number of mechanic vacancies that are continually
Suffering.
posted, it's very hard to find mechanics these days. There's such a need everywhere.
Mhm.
And, most of the firms, I mean, I sit on the board at Rankin, so I know what they're
Yeah.
doing. Most of the firms are actually hiring their mechanics, sending them the training, paying for the education with a guaranteed job when they come out, and allowing them to work as an intern paid while they're going to school. So it's getting harder and harder to find mechanics. I mean, our guys spend a lot of time at Rankin trying to recruit and get people interested in coming. We're there this week, Thursday, I think is our job fair.
And besides our guys attending job fairs, what we've done, working with the Department of Personnel, is a 6-month probationary period for a Tech 3 mechanic is 6 months. It's for all civil service. What we've done is we've created a Tech 3 trainee, and we've extended the working test period to 11 months. Okay, so somebody comes in at the bottom of the pay scale from Rankin, they graduate from Rankin, come in as a Tech 3 trainee. Instead of 6 months, we give them 11 months, we give them some tools, we help them along, and we've been progressing and they're becoming full-time civil service employees through that process. So that's been working well. We also have a per performance position in this shop, so we'll do something part-time while somebody's going to school 20 hours a week. If they could get their own tools, and then we hire them in the trainee program, then they graduate to the full Tech 3. So that's what we're trying to do.
And those are both new programs in the last 2 years, I would say.
2 years.
2 years.
Okay. Well, that's awesome that you all are actually working on recruitment strategies to
Tradesmen
address
are hard
the.
to find.
They are, I mean, it's, yes, they are.
And our pay's not as competitive as
That was
some of
going
the
to be my
industry
next
is.
is.
question.
I mean, we've got nice
Um,
benefits, but
The
if you're
pay is
young,
not.
they look for the pay, and
Right.
it's not as competitive. It's competitive, but it's not as competitive as places like Enterprise or, you know, some of these large trucking companies are paying pretty big dollars.
But our retirement benefits are much better than
Yes, they
theirs.
are. And you have to remember that a
No, the
lot of,
cities, yeah.
we also have the residency rule, which sometimes can also be a drawback if someone's from the St. Charles or someone's from one of the further out county areas, which you see a lot of the Rankin students do come from those areas. They also look closer to home for the work.
Okay, that's all the questions I have, thank you.
Are there any other questions? No one? Okay.
I make a motion that we pass Board Bill 135 out with a do pass recommendation.
Second.
Moved in second, Board Bill number 135. Could you please call the roll?
Alderman Conway, Alderman Moore, Alderman Vaccaro,
No,
Alderman Cone,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard,
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad, Chairwoman Davis.
Aye.
3 aye votes, 1 no vote. Do pass.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board Bill number 136. Susan, you gonna make the presentation? Sure. Okay.
Madam Chairwoman, Alderman, I'm Susan Taylor. I'm the Director of Port Business Development for the city's Port Authority, which is housed at SLDC. And the bill before you, the city's charter limits leases from the Port Authority to 25 years. And we have an ordinance that essentially allows a tenant, one of our tenants who's not in breach, to send us a letter saying they'd like to re-up for the next 25 years, and this ordinance allows them to do that. So the ordinance before you would change that, so that, I mean, if we have a good tenant, we want to keep the good tenant, but we want to have some control over the process whereby we can negotiate a new lease with an existing tenant. So that's the purpose of this bill.
Okay, I don't know if everyone had an opportunity to read the board bill, but it's short and to the
Sweet.
point.
It's like, where's the
Okay.
rest of it?
Yeah, it's short and to the point.
You can thank the outside counsel, Tom Ray. who's-
Right, it's a
Already
simple
said.
process and procedure
Right.
allowing for that. Any questions?
I do.
Go right ahead, sir.
So, just so I understand,
Mhm.
it's an existing, but in their new or at least going forward, they'll be allowing, it'll be at a higher rate than what it is now, or is it extending it at the same rate? for
The
25
rates,
more years?
the rate is one of the issues that we could talk about, whereas under the current ordinance, they say, we want the same lease we have now, and she has to say yes. So now you have an opportunity to talk about the rate and all the other terms of the ordinance.
So extending the next 25 years for the same company, the rates would most likely go up.
They could.
They could. I mean, we've done some lease comp studies, and our leases, our rates are low compared to other ports.
Would the lease come back in front of us then?
Yes.
So we would still, at the end of it, we would still approve the final lease, so we would know if it went up or down or stayed the same. That was my only question.
All right, Alderman Cone.
Well, one, I'd like to have my name added to this as a co-sponsor. This is way overdue.
Okay.
It is very short. There's no severability clause, there's no effective clause in this. I mean, I know that they're maybe not legally required, but they're nice to have.
Well, it is severable.
Yeah, would you-
4 is a severability.
Oh, there you go.
There's no
Okay.
emergency clause.
That's not normally how these are written though, but, okay. Yeah, so, I mean, essentially, this is just allowing us the purpose to renegotiate the extension of the lease agreement, with especially these long-term leases on our
Well, the
ports.
25 years is the max you can have, and that's what they go out for.
Right.
Usually with options. But this just gives them the opportunity to say, well, then we'll talk about it as opposed to, that's the one we want.
Right, yeah, no, that's what I feel like we should have been doing for a long time, so, makes sense to me.
Right. Alderwoman Howard.
So in the past, if an entity wanted to renew their lease
Mhm.
and they would express that, it would remain the same as they've had in the past 25 years?
Yeah.
Oh, so you could be leasing for 1990 rates, I guess, and renew that.
1940 rates.
Or 1940 rates. So, once that's negotiated, are there increases built into those leases for 25 years, or is it usually they're static?
There's a process whereby the lease rates come up for review every 5 years. And so
Okay.
there's a built-in increase, that's kind of like this, inflation's kind of like this.
Right.
And that's built into the lease, so every lessee knows that their rates will go up, and it either is 15% or 25%. But it's 15 or 25% of like $1 that was established in the 70s. So it's not 15 or 20% of the existing
Okay.
rate. So generally, they go up by 2 cents per
Pennies.
square foot, or 1 to 2 cents per square foot, or $1 to $2 per linear foot. So we're kind of locked into, that's a minimum. So we're locked into that minimum, which is fine, it's always good to have a floor.
Right.
But a lot of the rates, a lot of the leases are worth
Much
considerably more.
Right. So we're basically giving the store away in many cases?
Yes.
Okay. So this would preclude that if they didn't negotiate and they would have 6 months to express they want to stay, and
Right.
so we would either say, yes,
Mhm.
at this current rate, or we
We
put us
negotiate.
into negotiations. One more question, where's the whereases?
It's not written like a typical board bill, it generally is.
No, I'm just kidding, thank you. No, it's very simple and very clean, thank you.
I do.
Go right ahead.
Whose idea was this? Thank you. It's wonderful
Add my
that
name
we're
also
actually,
as co-sponsor,
yeah.
it's about time.
I make a motion that we pass board bill 136 out with a due pass
Second.
recommendation.
Moved in second, please call the roll.
Alderman Conway, Alderman Moore, Alderman Vaccaro, Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard,
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad, Chairwoman Davis.
Aye.
4 aye votes do pass.
Thank you.
I have one more question I probably should ask. How many berths do we have on the river?
The Port Authority has 2 kinds of leases, square footage and mooring. So for mooring, we have about 430 barge spots. We lease per linear foot.
Uh-huh.
So we had a lease comp study done, and we'd like to change that. Those are some of the leases we need to renegotiate, because those in particular are especially undervalued.
So those would come before us also?
Yes, yes, they would.
Okay.
Is that the study from 1996?
The one we just finished is from 2017, but yes, the most recent one was 1992.
That's,
So we
can I
have
get a copy of the 2017 study?
Sure.
That would be great.
Can you send it to the
Yeah,
committee?
send it to the committee.
Okay.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
City might be making some money.
So committee, we have a presentation, it's gonna be done by Amber Goody. And we wanted to, I wanted to thank you because, I really appreciate the work that you do. I know that we have had some, a lot of people challenging a lot of things. And sometimes it's just good to know what's going on. Go right
Thank you,
ahead.
Alderman. Thank you, Alderwoman Davis and the rest of the committee members, and thank you for having me here today. You know, we have talked about, I guess, over the last couple of years since I've been coming, I think it's now maybe 4 from time to time there. I've been here 4 years now, officially October the 7th. So from time to time, we have various concession agreements that do come before this body. And questions get raised about what's the difference between the official federal ACDB program that stands for Airport Concessions Disadvantaged Business Program, and that of our local. So what I attempted to do was to take probably a very big topic with lots of regulations and sort of streamline it. But just to give you an overview of what the similarities are, but as well as a few differences. And what our job is, particularly at the airport, and also administering 2 programs. So with respect to the overall program intent, you know, in its basic elements, it is to ensure that the playing field is level for minority business owners whether that's on the federal level, when there are federal dollars involved, or on the local, that the playing field is level. And we do that with an intent of having a program. With the ACDBE program, the federal government, the FAA Civil Rights Division, monitors that program. We have responsibility with respect to submitting, we move over to, I'll skip over what a concession, I think you all kind of know what our concessions are. But if you move forward to what is required in our ACDBE program, airports are required to submit a plan to the FAA.
What page are you on?
I'm sorry, I'm on page 5.
One more, Joe.
Mhm. And it is a condition of our grant funding. So we receive AIP funding for taxiways and so forth. Any transportation recipient that receives more than $250,000 in a fiscal year is required to have a registered federal DBE and ACDBE program. So that's the beginning of it. And as a requirement, we submit various documents each year to them. If we move to page 6, gives you an idea of what some of those particular things are with respect to our program. The first bullet is we, and submitting our plan, we have to submit what is called a goal-setting methodology. Now, this is where there's a difference in our local program. Under the federal program, that goal-setting methodology is, it's pretty, it can be complicated at times, but it basically requires us to project and to look at all the contracts every 3 years that would be coming up. We're required to submit ours in the next month or so to the FAA. It's 3 years coming up. And that process includes looking at all of the contracts in food and beverage and retail that would potentially could come up. So we work very closely with Rob Solerano's office and properties, because they're the ones who put out those solicitations. They're working with the airport director and others about what the vision is for the airport. And so some of the ones in the past that have come up, for instance, like the wine bar, such as, what's been a new one, the local, the club concession, the new airline club concession. These are new thoughts and ideas. So they really ask us to sort of work with and try to envision what might be coming up. But then the second step of that plan is also to take back a look at what you currently have under contract and what's coming up for renewal. And then we go through a process that is outlined about what the current participation has been, what it has been over the goals and so forth, and then projecting and coming up with an overall goal for your 3-year plan, which we'll take a look at in just a minute. So outside of that, I mean, that's a major part of what we're monitored against is this plan. The ACDBE goals cover 2 types. There's car rental and then what they call non-car rental. So that's probably fairly easy to understand. Our car rental or our enterprise, thrifty, Avis budget, things like that. These are very big dollar companies. Airport goals across the country, you will see, and you'll see in our annual report, they typically are around 1% to 2% of all of the gross receipts. And that is largely because in the car rental industry, the biggest component in the car rental industry in terms of what can be purchased or what a subcontractor can participate is in delivering, bless you, is in autos themselves. So, and in fact, one of the industry groups that I work with, AMAC, we've had a national dialogue with FAA and AMAC in the car rental industry, and local representatives from here. Sean Fitzgerald, who's on the Airport Commission, has been a part of that group to work with the federal government and how we can change some of the criteria for the car rental industry people to be able to participate and recognize more minority-owned dealerships. There are minority dealerships out there in the U.S., but the federal government's, under the FAA's program, their ceiling is much lower, or rather, I should say, higher in terms of threshold of what it takes to be able to qualify to be an ACDBE under the car rental. And one of the main barriers is that under the federal program, that there is a ceiling on your personal net worth, and that's $1.32 million. Well, these days, I mean, car dealerships, owners must demonstrate that they have far more net worth than that. Even McDonald's franchises these days, we understand, require you to have $1 million closely if you're going to be a franchise owner. So while they exist, but within the US DOT world, those folks can't be recognized and counted towards goals. So many of them do use those vendors, but in our reporting, they can't count them. So we, you know, we do applaud their efforts in that, and they report that out typically in the national scene with the Minority Supplier Development Councils across the U.S. But I did want to make that point because sometimes they get a little sensitive that people don't think that they aren't, you know, that they aren't trying to incorporate minority-owned businesses. But they do, just in the airport world, they can't officially count on our reporting mechanism.
And Enterprise is probably the most
One of the best, yeah.
participatory
Yeah.
company relative to that board and within the industry trying to find solutions. So they've been very, very active on that board. It's very important to Mr.
So
Taylor.
involving who services their cars, who
Yes.
they buy their cars from. And so the ceiling on that, they, in other words, if I were a dealership, I
Mhm.
couldn't be counted if I had more than $1.3 million.
Right, you
Network.
wouldn't, right,
What car
network.
dealership wouldn't?
Right.
I mean.
Then that's the
they're-
thing, we understand there is maybe one small dealership in Florida that Miami-Dade gets to. Kind of, we're still all trying to figure out, and everybody asking, who's that dealer, you know, and so forth. Well, they don't want to necessarily give out a lot of times that information because the more business that dealer gets, they're also going to grow out of the, you know,
Out of that
out of that
program, that
program.
slot,
So
yeah.
that's why there's been a
Alderman
national
Boyd has his
dialogue.
dealer's license.
So that-
Alderman Boyd, I'm kidding, I'm not suggesting it.
So some of the other things that they do concentrate on, for instance, like car seats, and just for that, keys. There is also maintenance work or again, some tires, lubricants, things like that. So they tend to concentrate more on the goods and services. But when the program was set up, it was really intended, you go back
Involve
30 years
minority
ago,
car
car dealership owners. And so that's why this national dialogue has to continue, and frankly, the FAA, you know, and willing and to take before probably Congress changes to that certification criteria. They've been reluctant to do that,
So
unfortunately.
basically, they just haven't changed that number.
They just haven't changed it, yes, or given exception for the car rental industry people, recognizing it's unique, so.
You know,
who
Amber,
knows?
you just said something very critical.
Mhm.
And again, we have a lot of people complaining about a lot of things, and they don't understand that we cannot change them locally. It's the federal level that has put these things in place.
Yes.
And it's really harmful for us. I just attended the convention that was here for minority vendors for corrections.
Oh.
And again, that industry is suffering from the same problems. Federal regulations. So
And
we
very
deal with that.
antiquated, that have not recognized changes
I
in
noticed
how
some
an
things they
industry
talked.
operates.
Exactly. They talked about some things that have been changed since the 40s.
Well, and in fact, that
Yeah.
1.32 million just got changed in 2012, actually, when Lambert Airport hosted the AMAC, Airport Minority Advisory Council. That's the industry trade council
Okay.
for aviation, whose sole purpose is that it lobbies for changes and works with, we're members in terms of airports that concentrate on minority and women-owned businesses, DBEs, and the contracting process. And in fact, I had the good fortune of serving on the board at that time, and that was one of our major focuses, and we announced it that at that time, the personal net worth had been $750,000, and it had been that way for 25, 28 years at that time, and it's because no one had foreseen that there was never an inflationary factor added to it, but yet under the SBA rules for small business, they had it. So it took us 2 years,
To get that changed.
longer with testimony in Congress and a lot in terms of getting that. So rulemaking, as well as you all, you know, I have to tell you all, you know, it is a challenge, and so people are very, sometimes reluctant because of sometimes the fear that if something gets before a body, that you might come out with something not less desirable, but.
I mean, the good news is
It's-
people are successful, the bad news
Yes.
is they're
Right.
successful.
Exactly.
The program was built to
Right.
make,
To help people to grow,
Right,
right.
right.
And in itself, it
and
was
bring more
stagnating.
people up so that their
Right.
companies can now take advantage of it. So
Exactly.
that's the intent of the program.
Right.
It is
Yeah.
to graduate people.
Right.
There are some who don't want to be graduated.
They don't want to graduate.
Right,
Right.
but that is the intent of the program, and I don't think you'll see
Right.
that change. I would be surprised, because the intent is, let's find more small businesses that we can help and grow to the point where they're now able to do business on their own and not.
On a level playing field, yeah.
Right.
Very interesting.
So moving on in terms of page 8 is just again, a snapshot again of, how do you qualify as an ACDBE? You must be a for-profit business. You must fall within the small business standards set by SBA. And you must be at least 51% owned by a socially, economically disadvantaged individuals. In a nutshell, what does that mean? That on the socially, economically disadvantages is that you qualify on the personal net worth side under the federal program, and then socially are meeting one of those ethnicity or gender classes that is outlined in the federal regs. We have the same thing in our local program. So on page 9 is to give you a quick snapshot, and we utilize this comparison a lot when we are doing certification workshops to really help applicants and people when they're becoming certified to understand what the differences in the two programs are. When I came on board 4 years ago, one of the issues before us through the FAA was that they wanted us to really delineate the difference between the two programs. There was a lot of commingling. And what it did was, and they actually apparently came to St. Louis, I wasn't here at the time, but they interviewed various contractors and vendors and found that many of them didn't quite understand the difference between the federal program and the local. So we've done a lot in working with and revamping our website, as changes have come along with our overall airports, to really hone in that DBE is a federal term.
Right.
It's a federal program, and it means that's when there are federal dollars involved. MWBE is when there are non-federal dollars involved. And even though the airport doesn't take local money, it is funds that are not federal. So we're very intentional about stressing that. The other is that we found that we had over about 800 people in our directory. A good number of them were certified in both programs because people would check and say, oh, I just should pick everything. And then when they were asked to renew that certification each year, many people dropped off and they said, well, I didn't get any work from this. I found that we had people who were in the federal program certified that might be, they design drapes, and that's great. That may be something that may be needed for local, but rarely do you find, in the federal transportation arena where there's a contract for drapes and so forth. You might find it on a big level. So what we've done is a lot of education through outreach, through certification workshops to help people to understand the difference. And this chart is one way to do that. One of the things that we find is that, some people don't want to disclose what their personal net worth is. And that's fine. That's one of the key advantages or distinctions in our local program. This local program in St. Louis is very unique in comparison to, I would say, across the board in a lot of states and regions. A lot of local programs still have the same criteria for their federal and their local and so forth. You can be the biggest of big here in St. Louis and you don't have a personal net worth requirement, nor do you have a gross receipts requirement. So it really does allow for that, on the local side, that minority woman-owned business to continue to grow. Examples of that would be a worldwide technology, and so forth. So, and one of the businesses will tell you that what they need to grow more than anything is continued contracting opportunities. So, just to say, I think that's a kudos for this program.
That I found was interesting here in our region is, and people were even more confused with the state certification as well.
Yes.
And so that just put a whole nother,
Yes.
and it was just madness trying to get that figured out. And I can't remember Calvin's last name, that was the governor's assistant.
Yeah. Yes, he retired.
He left the governor's
Right.
cabinet, but
And they do have a new director, and
they were trying to
met
straighten
with
that
him.
out because it was confusing.
It came on the tail end
Right,
of Nixon's
right.
administration claims
Yeah.
that they made changes. I will have to say, they've been in contact with us more.
Good.
And they have made some changes. They did hire a consultant to help them make some changes and to benchmark and to research. So, and they're bringing their process more online, and they've invested in some I think some additional staff.
Well, that's
So
good to
I
hear.
think I'm not hearing as much of dissension anymore or differences as there hopefully is more alignment with it.
Very
So I
good.
realize that our time is short, but just to wrap up, between pages 10 and 11 to give you really an idea of how goal setting plays into our solicitations. So we ask this question, well, how did this goal, why this goal, and so forth? How did we come up with this? So this chart here on 10 is meant to represent, to give you an overview of the last several solicitations that have come up. Some have been for renewal, some of them have been new concepts, such as the local restaurant or the common use club. So I think the one, and I hate that Alderman Vaccaro is not here with us, because he typically asks these good questions. And that is, why is 0% goal? And so forth. Well, under our federal regs, they want us to look at and take opportunities to set what we call a race neutral, a 0%. We are required to, especially when our program is achieving stellar results, which you'll see on the next page, is that goal setting is meant to even the playing field. Goals should not be used at every single contracting opportunity. This has been the fundamental basis that diversity programs have been challenged in federal courts, and why many of them sometimes have been overturned. So the Fed started modifying these regulations and these mandates some time ago that said, look, we're not going to tell you that you can't set goals. But through that 3-year methodology plan that we talked about, we're asking, what's your projection of what you're doing? We want you to look at individual contract opportunities and earnestly ask, are there subcontracting opportunities there? If you don't think so, or you don't have any history with what you can obtain, look at setting a race neutral goal and then see what comes back. So the Common Use Club, for instance, this was a brand new concept. Right. It's not a traditional food and beverage restaurant where we've got excellent history on. It's a very unique. So we were concerned, and I talked with our FAA folks and said, what do you think on this? And he said, well, it's a single location. This one would be good to do that with. So we set a 0% goal, and the bidder who was awarded came back and said, we have found where we can involve some people to provide some goods and services to us in janitorial, and I think
Regency
will be on that one, as well as, and I think they've recently contacted about they may be adding a couple of more. So when they submitted their bid with that, they outlined, hey, our projection is that we think we can do at least 3.7%. So when they do that, they are held to that in their contract. They're not held to 0%. So what you submit at bid time is what your contract reflects, and we will monitor against that. So they don't get to back out of it, per se. But then on some of the others, as you can see, such as luggage cart, the goal was 4.23%. They came back with 9.8. They have a subcontractor who's ACDBE, who's gonna do the staffing for that. Shoe shine, excellent one, 10.53% here, but the prime bidder on that who staffs that is 100% ACDBE vendor, and so we get to count that credit. Wine bar was 0%, and they came back with 5%. So these are some of the recent ones. But it's meant to show that under the federal program, unlike our local, we don't have a static goal that you apply to every single contract. You can have more, you can have less. Our current food and beverage contract, that is not listed on here with us, it's got a 40% goal on it.
Which is the massive one.
And that's a big one. So
The
it's.
vendors set those
No, we set it at that time. So that contract has been in place, and they met it, and they got significant participation through, to D&D, Darrell Jones, as well as OHM, concessions on those two. And their overall, that they're held to is 40%. That's significant. That's a very big goal. So, last page here, page 11, this represents the actual reporting period that we submit to FAA each year. These are monitored, they provide us feedback. It shows you what the car rental goals have been and what the achievement. Most importantly, I think what we're very proud of from 2013 on up through 16, this is the last 3 years, is that you can see the steady growth in what our achievement has been. And that comes largely is because that we do have folks and good partners who achieve more than sometimes than what they're asked for, than what we ask for. And we also work with them to identifying and finding additional people. Those goals are meant to be the floor, not the ceiling.
And these are all ACDBE.
These are all ACDBEs, not our local program. Right. The local is governed by the mayor's executive order, and those are a static 25 and 5. we're working on the airport's annual report.
Achievement goals are very good.
Yeah. So, you know, food and beverage, the airport's food and beverage contract will be coming up in what?
It expires December 31st, 2020.
So it's gonna be a great, and Rob and I are working together that we are gonna look at probably having something at the airport in the next year, reaching out to local restaurateurs and people about the food and beverage. Some of those folks may qualify to be able to be certified, because we want a reflection of local and probably some national brands.
So when you say reaching out, are you just going to have like a fair at the airport, or,
Yeah,
I
well,
mean, will you all, I mean,
We'll
I
post,
can't
we'll
help but
post,
think like
right.
a place like Cherokee Street, where
Right.
there's like
Oh.
a huge density of local restaurants.
Right.
You know, like just going there and, you know, talking to the managers.
Well, we'll
or
probably
owners of
first,
the-
what I'd like to see us really do is host it at the airport. We've got wonderful space on Concourse B that holds a number of people, and
I
we're,
guess
you know,
like
we're
knowing
fortunate,
the
yeah.
restaurant business, it's very difficult to get restaurant owners out of their business.
We feed them.
Because it's, you know, I know, but it's still very difficult
That's
to
a
get
good
them
point,
out.
that's,
And,
Most
I
of them are
mean,
closed on
particularly-
Mondays, so Monday's a good
A
time
good
to
day.
do
and that's a
it.
good, yeah, because it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be during
Yeah.
the
You know,
week and
but
make
I
it
just think
industry
from like a
specific.
recruitment perspective, you know, just maybe doing a lunch down on a place like Gravois or Cherokee where there are
So what do
a
you
lot
think
of
maybe about a
minority-owned
two-prong, that
businesses.
we have something big, because the
Well, you
other
can invite
aspect.
them down to the
about-
airport.
And then
for
you
sure,
follow
but,
up
you
with
know,
them.
Well, I'd
Yeah.
probably go out first
Mhm.
and then do an event at the airport that you are
Okay.
inviting them to while you're at their establishment.
Because
you
there
know.
are
I just-
several little I mean,
There's
you know,
tons of wonderful
right.
minority-owned,
Well, but
you
then
know,
there's
restaurants.
nice, venues to maybe have
Right.
those gatherings at, like
Right.
Gribbage or,
Yeah.
And
You know,
as
the
we, do-
mill.
you know, if you've noticed, the last few, like the Vino Volo, the one that's on the street now, that
the,
will close
the
up.
wine bar.
Yeah, they're fabulous, yeah, I know, and the,
Did they, are they
I
gonna
mean,
get
but St.
bigger?
Louis has.
oh, they did, they
you
doubled
know,
the size in
Oh,
terms of.
'cause I was
and
in
they
there in
opened-
August, and it
And
was
they
like-
opened, yeah, and they opened the one now on A.
Okay.
But what we're
Like St.
seeing,
Louis is like very wonderful soul food, Bosnian food,
Mm-hmm.
Vietnamese
but we're
food,
seeing, we
Italian
saw
food.
more
That's,
vendors
you
come
know.
to the table in this last solicitation with locals, so I think they, if they can partner with, and, you know, a concept doesn't have to be a single concept. When we put something out, we can say that it could be a restaurant and you can have two partners in it. So you could have someone off Cherokee and you could have someone off,
Do I just need to call
Say the
Gerald
Central
and
West
go
End or
lunch?
or
whatever.
something that
Right.
could, so you can offer, so the variety of food offered could be,
Because the space could be common use space.
right, right.
And I see that in some airports, and I love it, because I don't have to walk 4 miles
Right.
between the two to get what I want.
Yeah.
So I like that. And I'm very excited with these achievement goals, really excited. But I agree with the opportunity
Okay.
to go
Okay.
into
That's a
the
great
spaces.
suggestion.
We'll do that.
Yeah, I mean, we can pick, all of us could pick streets that have sometimes
Yeah.
as many as 6 or 8 restaurants in a 2-block area.
Right.
And if we went to that area, it would be easier to kind of bring some of them in.
And what may be helpful is we reach out to you for those introductions.
Mm.
You know, if you know any of you.
It's a great
that's-
thing that through the each of the aldermen.
Right,
Yeah.
that's an
Who are
easier
the
way to
ones,
have
yeah,
a.
that
I mean,
is- That's a great way, yeah.
I fly out of Lambert, you know, a couple times a year, but I can't think of a Bosnian restaurant or
No,
a Vietnamese
no.
restaurant or even a Mexican restaurant or a soul food restaurant
Well,
even,
there's-
or even barbecue. I mean,
Well, barbecue,
Yeah,
well,
we're
some of the
trying to
barbecue,
get
Schlafly's got some of the barbecue, and so there is
okay.
some.
But I mean,
But
there's,
not
but
the
like Sugar
established.
Fire or Pappy's.
No, we hope, we
you know.
tried to encourage them to bid on this last bid,
I
and,
mean, there's some like
They did it.
very, very
Now, some people don't
well-known-
want to do that, they don't want that headache.
Well,
Right.
Well, but see, that's part of
understand
that education, why we're
Yeah.
starting now, because
Right.
there are nuances and financial in terms of operating in an airport. There's lots of upside,
Yeah.
but there
There
are,
are
so can
some
be
downside.
some
it's a
downside.
very different, it's a very
It's a
different
different
operation. You
rate.
don't rent space, we
Absolutely.
get, you know, percentages of your revenue. It's a
Yeah.
totally different
Model.
model for people, so
Yeah.
getting comfortable for that's hard
Right.
until you, and, you know.
It
once-
takes time,
Yeah.
and the finances.
You know,
So we're
Pasta
looking
House has
at-
done it, obviously Schlafly has done it, and you've got, like I said, we're about.
Who's operating the wine bar?
Vino Volo,
Being-
and they
Where are
depend,
they?
they're based out of,
San Francisco.
San Francisco.
Oh, okay,
So
so
they're
they're
not
not a local.
No, they're not a
No,
local.
no, they use.
It would be nice if we could.
They,
get-
yeah, I
Have
mean,
we talked
they,
to any of the Missouri wineries
Yeah.
about?
Well, you know what, we did have an outreach on
We did.
that, and we had local wineries, and so, one of the things that we found
Jen,
that
we
through
don't want
with
local.
Missouri.
We wanted
that-
to
that-
Sure,
that-
bars.
No, that there's some
Not that I
nuance,
should be
I'm
plugging
trying to remember,
anyone in
Rob,
particular.
within Missouri law.
With the liquor
that-
laws?
Yeah, with the liquor
There's-
laws, that doesn't allow wineries to be restaurants
Be
or
restaurants
something.
and
Yes,
some things
it's,
like
it's
that.
a
So
That must be
weird
true
little thing.
because
Vintners
in-
did come out.
It's a weird thing, yeah.
But we also had several local wine bars at the outreach program who looked at the opportunity. And also, you know, the
We had
Norman
about
now,
25
you know,
people at
they
that
also
meeting,
looked
yeah.
at partnering with one of the locals at one point.
Because when you go to the wineries, there's no food, most of them.
Well, there are.
Cheese boards.
No,
Yeah.
they have, I
But,
mean,
yeah.
like Chandler Hill, there's a handful of them that
Chalmette
actually
now
have,
does, but, you
like,
know, those are.
wonderful brunches and, you know, food
Yeah.
year round.
Point out, we do have Missouri Vineyards too, upstairs, on the second floor.
Right, we do have Missouri Vineyards with all Missouri wines, yeah.
But that's just a little nuance, but those are the things that you find out. And so that's why I would think our point is starting early to, what, 2020 sounds far, but it
Right,
really
yeah, but
isn't.
it's not that
And
far
It's not
away.
that far because there's a lot of work that goes into the whole education and so forth. People are not going to do these
And the bidding.
on, you know, on a dime.
Just you talk about local, you talk about the local concepts and things like that. We're not the only ones that are searching local concepts.
Right.
You know, there's large companies that do this around the nation, Host, Delaware North, SSP America do it at a lot of airports. And I know the SSP America concept representative has made plans to come out to St. Louis, and then the others will do the same. And they will do their own research in their own,
Well, Panera's
vetting of
opened
local
in
concepts.
Arizona.
Yeah.
Right.
So they all go out and they research their own stuff too.
But your competition is great too, because I have a friend and he staffs, almost every large stadium. And
Oh,
so,
stadium, right. A lot
yeah,
of
and
these
so
companies do the
recruiting
stadiums.
people
Right.
into these venues, you have a lot of competition with different entities.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I want to applaud us on here locally is if we continue to talk to each other and help getting people to the right
Right.
place.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to, follow up
Very
on.
good.
And I need to apologize to you, Amber,
What?
because we've been working on the MBWB bill for the city,
Right.
and I didn't include you with your knowledge base. And so I shall be sending a copy of it to
Well,
you
thank
today.
I try to keep tabs and say, what's
Right,
going on?
because your knowledge base is incredible, and I'd like for you to review it because we want to make sure that we have the best for the city.
Well, thank you, appreciate
Okay?
it.
I have truly enjoyed this meeting. I appreciate the information, and anytime you feel the need, just ask. We need to be educated. We need to know more about what is going on.
Great, thank you,
Okay.
thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank
And I'll
you.
have to visit that wine bar now that it's fully open.
I know.
It's like,
It's been.
I'll be flying out
It's
next week. I'll
more than
use
double
it.
the size, and they opened the one on A
Meeting
concourse
is
open last
adjourned.
week.